All right, everyone, we're doing 10.4 part 2, how to evaluate expressions with negative exponents. Before we do that, let's review the quotient property, which is going to be helpful during this section. Let's start by evaluating x to the fifth divided by x to the third. We can do this two ways. If you expand, remember, x to the fifth means x multiplied by itself 5 times, and x to the third is x 3 times. From here, we can simplify by canceling out anything that's the same. Now, this is important. There is an invisible 1 down here. Don't forget that. It's not 0. So we have x squared over 1. And we never write it that way, right? We usually write it like this. So that's the expansion, like if you expanded it out. The other option was to use the shortcut method, which was taking subtraction. Take the top minus the bottom, and we're left with x squared again. Either way works. Well, what happens if we were to take those exponents and flip them? What if we took the reciprocal? Remember, a reciprocal means we flip it. What was in the denominator is now going to be the numerator. So x to the third over x to the fifth. Will it still equal x squared now that we have flipped the fraction? Well, let's find out. We're going to expand it at first. Cancel, cancel, cancel. Remember, there's that invisible 1 up here. So that becomes 1 over x squared. So does it equal x squared? No, these are not the same. So when we took the reciprocal, when we had smaller amount of x's on the top, you can see that here. We have less x's on the top. We don't have any x's on the top, only on the denominator. So let's tackle another one. Evaluate, write your answers using positive exponents. This is important when it says positive. It might give you negative. We're going to expand. And cancel out. Remember, there's that invisible 1 on top. So this becomes 1 over 2 to the third. And since the directions told me to leave it with a positive exponent, I stopped there. If you used your calculator, 1 over 8, you wouldn't have gotten credit here. Evaluate, write your answers using negative exponents. So now we're going to do the same thing. This time I'm going to use the shortcut method. 2 to the fourth, minus 7. Remember, that's the quotient rule. 4 minus 7 is negative 3. So if you use the expansion rule, your question is, well, how would I get here? Well, this is what we're learning today. These two things mean the same. In conclusion, 2 to the negative third is the same thing as 1 over 2 to the third. If we looked back at our example, 1 over x squared, that's the same thing as x to the negative 2. They mean the same thing. When you have a negative exponent, it's the reciprocal of what x squared would have been, 1 over x squared. And we're going to learn a quick trick for this. We have a lot of examples today, I apologize, but this is kind of a tricky section. So in words, and it doesn't really make sense in words, I know it's kind of tricky. For any number x to the exponent n, x to the negative n is the reciprocal of x to the n. And here's what it looks like. X to the negative n is the same as 1 over x to the n. What does that mean? Well, this is the rule to live by with negative exponents. To change this word is sorry about that. To change the sign of the exponent, jump the line and flip the sign. What does that mean? Jump the line. Well, the line, this is your line. Let's take a look. Again, lots of examples today, guys. Lots of examples. Write each using a negative exponent. So remember, every number is technically over 1. Like 3 is really 3 over an invisible 1, right? X, that's the same thing as x over 1. That's just number theory. So when we're jumping the line, we're saying this 3 is going to jump over that line. So let's take a look. 4 squared, that's the same as 1 over 4 to the negative 2. We jump that line and flip the sign of the exponent. That's how you change the sign. X to the third, that's the same as 1 over x to the negative 3. We're jumping that line and flipping the sign. Negative 4 to the fifth, we're jumping down. Negative 4 stays, and that exponent turns to negative 5. And we're going to do the same thing over here. If it's in the denominator, if we want to change that sign, we need to jump that line. We're going to flip it, go up here, x to the negative 2. B to the 4. Well, we're going to jump that line. It's going to go on top now. If you wanted to put that 1 there, but it's really not good form. We're going to jump that line and flip that sign. Three to 7, we're going to jump the line and flip the sign of the exponent. Remember, there's always a number where when you cancel things or move things around, there's always that 1 there. Okay, so that's how you change all the positives to negatives. Now let's take a look at what happens when we start with a negative number, but the directions tell us to write all our answers in positive exponents. And I wrote it again, every number is over 1. So 3 is the same as 3 over 1. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to jump that line and flip the sign. Jump that line and flip the sign. Jump that line and flip the sign. Jump the line, flip the sign. Jump the line, flip the sign. Okay, so if you need, oh geez, I went way over, sorry. If you need to pause the video here to kind of just let that sink in a little bit, go ahead and do so. If not, we're ready to move on. Simplifying with positive exponents. So we have a few problems here. 5 times x to the negative 3. I'm going to put a box around things with an exponent because those are the things I'm going to have to change. The 5 is going to stay. So if we're changing the sign, we're going to keep that 5 in place. All of this is going to jump that line and flip that sign. Okay, here you can do this. We can't use the product rule here because the bases aren't the same. So I'm going to go ahead and jump that line and flip that sign. And for those that need a review of fractions, I encourage you to go ahead and just look up product of fractions if you don't understand this part. X to the 5th all over 4 squared. And it says keep with positive exponents, so we're not going to simplify that. Almost done, everybody. All right, it's up to you on how you tackle this one. I'm going to go ahead and change everything to positive exponents right away. So that 10 is going to stay because that doesn't have any exponents that need to get moved around. But everything else will have to move. This has a negative exponent. We only want positive, so I'm going to flip it and put it in that denominator. I'm going to flip this one because I need it to be positive. And now I can either expand it or use the quotient rule, which says 10x to the 5 minus 4, 10 to the x minus, 10 to the x to the, oh my goodness, I can't speak today. 10 times x to the 1 power, which is the same as 10 times x. Now, is there another way of doing it? Sure. And I'm going to do that right here. You could have also done 10x to the negative 4 minus negative 5. Negative 4 minus a negative 5 is just 1. So either way works. It's just how your mind sees these. Does it see it as the quotient rule, or do you see it as positive and negatives? That's up to you. All right, last 3 here. Evaluate the expression. So it doesn't say anything about exponents, so that means they want a number answer. I see a negative exponent, so I'm going to take that. And that becomes 4 times 1 over 8 plus 7. And I might run out of room here. I'm going to multiply these guys. 4/8 is the same as 1/2. 1/2 plus 7 is 7 1/2. Okay, I see another negative exponent here. So I need to jump that line and flip the sign to make it positive, just because I like working with positives rather than negatives. So we've got negative 3 times negative 3 positive 2 now. I have now flipped it. I've taken this and I moved it up there. I jumped the line and I flipped that sign. So what is negative 3 squared? That's negative 3 times negative 3, positive 9, which is negative 27 as our final answer. Last problem, everyone. 5 to the negative 3 times 5 to the positive 6. You can do it 2 ways. I'm going to look at it as product rule. I have the same bases, so I can just add those guys together. Negative 3 plus 6, which is the same as 125. If you didn't see it that way, you might have seen it as jumping that line, taking that negative, making it positive. The downside with this, you deal with fractions, right? So if you don't like fractions, don't do it this way. And now you can do the quotient rule. So 6 minus 3 is 5 to the 3rd, which is 125. So either way works. Sometimes you might see it like the longer way. That's it for today, everyone. Have a great week. Go ahead and log into Big Ideas. You have an assignment.